What is going on, everybody? Non here, and tonight we go back to Pokemon. Been spending some time on some other games, just talk about some thoughts. But tonight we're going to hit Pokemon because one of the very, very, very common misconceptions and mathematical errors that a lot of folks make in this space, well, albeit flipping, investing, trading, whatever, is there's so many loudmouths that say just buy the best set. The best set's always going to outperform everybody else. Buy the best set. And that is a patently false statement. Now, it does work on occasion. If we look at Destined Rivals, that set has gone straight up. And the return on that set, basically any place that you have bought it, at least the booster boxes, you have pretty much outperformed most of the items. Not all of them, and we'll get to some of those. But I want to talk about just a couple concepts here. So the first concept is, and I've touched on this in past videos, sets that have gotten reprints in the last 2 years have really had a lid put on the returns. Now, a lot of folks, when the reprints came out, and this is your Surging Sparks, booster boxes, your Twilight, your Surging, Elite Trainer boxes, your Prismatic ETBs, a couple other things. It's really put the lid on returns for the product. Now, they haven't necessarily had a big negative price impact. The ETB reprints did, but it's really just held the price down for an extended period of time, whereas you have some sets that haven't gotten any reprints, and those things are absolutely off to the races. And I think part of the disparity at this point, and we'll start with Surging Sparks here, is there's so much Surging Sparks out there. And I actually remember a couple folks on YouTube just talking about how, oh, we got to reprint it. I got 3 cases and blah, 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 blah. There's none of it out there. I don't think people have the brain power to understand how much product of this is out there. Just because a certain store gets 2 boxes, 2 cases, 3 cases, you have to understand that these boxes are going to every LGS. They're going into the back of distributors' warehouses coming out at a later date. They're going into vending machines. They're going all over the place. So just because you see your little minuscule quarter of irrelevance in the market, no different than mine, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of product out there. And what we see with a lot of these reprints, and again, Surging Sparks is a perfect one. When boxes came out initially, everybody bought them, didn't really have an impact. But then as time went by, the market got saturated to the point where the second that the market would go up to $250, $60, $70, a ton of new supply would come onto the market just to sell, because a lot of these boxes sold for $160, $170, maybe a little bit less for distribution on the reprints. So it really created this gridlock where the price of these boxes hasn't gone up. And I mean, even now, you're still looking at $275, I think. Yeah, $275 low. So it's finally started moving. Quite honestly, this is probably one of the best. There's a fake account right there. This is probably one of the best opportunities out there. And I know some folks have spoken about it, and I do agree. But in the last year, and this is just because the box is up $30 in the last week, the return on this box is 21.75%, which in a normal world is great. But in the Pokemon world we live in, it's underperformed the market substantially. And it's really comes down to the fact that there was just so much of this pushed out into the market. And, we talked Destined Rivals. Europe is now on its 2nd or 3rd wave of booster box reprints. At some point, they're going to come into the US. Now, is it going to push the price down? Probably not. Probably not substantially, unless they dump a metric fuckload on the market. But it could very well just delay your returns on that set for really an extended amount of time. And the other issue that you run into with sets like that, and we'll talk about Lost Origin, Fusion Strike, is you start running into the law of large numbers as the price goes up, where if you want to try to match returns with some of your underloved product, such as your Temporal, your Surging, your Shroud of Fable, the price of those have to just move so far and so much in respect to the smaller sets to double. It's just there's a lot of situations where it's not feasible. So let's take a look at Surging Sparks ETBs. Now these have completely round trip since the reprint, but they're up 8% in the last year. You know, if you own these, they're pretty much dead money. I got all of mine through distribution through the reprints here. I think most of the costs on these were between 60 and 70, and I just sat on them, and I continue to sit on them. And now that it's round tripped, and it just takes time for things to churn through the market, because when the price of Pokemon goes down, the little Timmy shitheads don't want to buy it. And it's just really funny how it works. And then look at Twilight. Now we've round tripped and then we've come up a little bit more. Obviously, the booster boxes of this are pushing $400, but 40% in a year, not bad. But if this didn't get reprinted, these would probably be sitting at $250 to $300 each. But these were reprinted absolutely massively. Moving on, Prismatic. We just got another reprint of this. Now, in my opinion, the reason why this reprint had so much impact here, and again, it's pushed it from 200 down to 160. It's really the fact that a lot of the spend has refocused on Ascended Heroes as opposed to Prismatic Evolution. But again, in the last year, we're at up 45%. Not bad, but you know, it's all kind of about the same. Let's look at Paldea Evolved. Everybody loves Paldea Evolved. There's folks that talk about it every day. It's up 68% in the year. Very, very good movement. In the last 6 months, 33%. The chart's broken. So again, you have a reasonably good return here, but you start to run into large numbers. The box has to go from 500 to 1,000. And once you get over that $500 price point, and I will scream this until I'm blue in the face, the number of people willing to buy this product from you goes down substantially. And this is one of the things that people have been noticing in the market. And I'll give a shout out to DJ's Poke Center on this, because he was talking about it today. With 151 where the price is at $200 a booster bundle, it's really hard to sell to the average person. Mini tins for 151 are difficult to sell. Booster box or booster bundle displays are difficult to sell because you have folks that are investing, you have folks that are running rip and ship, and there aren't a whole lot of folks in between. There aren't a whole lot of normal people that just have dollars to throw around like that. And your rip and shippers are the cheapest motherfuckers on the planet. Yeah, I talked to quite a few people that sell to a lot of the folks on YouTube that are rip and shippers, and they would slit their mama's throat for a nickel. Let me tell you. But there's really not a whole lot of demand in the middle because people start to get priced out. So Fusion Strike, everybody's favorite set to love right now. It's up 47% in the last year. Not bad. 19% in the last 6 months. Not great. Lost Origin, up 54% in the last year. 20% in the last 6 months. Yeah, again, it's decent. In a normal market, these are phenomenal. In this market, quite honestly, they could be better. Now, you may point to the fact that Sword and Shield is underpriced. It's due for a move. I tend to agree with that. Now, we've obviously got it here. Now, granted, this is a pretty sizable buyout here of 20 boxes. But it still hasn't performed well. And this is your unicorn, Death Rivals, up 146% in the last year. I hate to say it, but until the reprints come for booster boxes, this thing's just going to continue to go up. But again, DJ said the same thing. Selling boxes of this is really, really fucking difficult right now. TCG Player, they're selling 5 boxes a day. It's not a whole lot of volume. 1 box, 2 box, 3 boxes. And again, there's 186 listed. There's plenty of this out there. It's just people are now getting skittish. You pay $650 plus tax, $700 for a booster box of something that's not a year old. That's terrifying to me. So Let's look at the flip side of the equation. So we're going to go through a bunch of products that just they haven't gotten reprints. The print runs were extremely, extremely tight. Now, they're not exactly class A or class B real estate, but look at temporal. It's drying up now. The prices are going nuts. Now, again, you're only up 50% in the last year, so this is on par with your Fusion, on par with your Lost Origin. Not quite as good as Paldea Evolved, but you can also buy a lot more of this. It's a little bit more liquid. Now, granted, it's only selling 2 a day right now, but the downside on buying something like this is exponentially lower than something like Paldea Evolved, in my opinion, because just the relative price point and the folks that if you want to sell a $500 box, there's far fewer buyers out there than if you want to sell a $335 box. And it's just kind of the way it is. Stellar Crown. My favorite last year, 46.28%. Good return. Great when you buy it at $95 a couple years ago. But again, unloved product. So let's go to the bogey here. Elite trainer boxes of Stellar Crown are up 92%. And I know a couple folks have done videos on Pokemon Center ETBs versus regular ETBs. I completely agree. I mean, you'd be stupid to buy this at 160 if you could pay an extra $10 and buy Pokemon Center. But these things are absolutely annihilating everything in the market except for Destined Rivals booster boxes right now. Shrouded Fable up 98% as well. Absolute home run on this stuff. You want to see the best performing product? Journey Together, ETBs. I imported two cases of these from Europe as part of a package deal. I think I paid $65 per, and I'm like, shit, this is going to be dead money forever. 78% in the last year, and you could buy as many of these as you want. And they're still selling 6 a day. Not bad. Not bad at all. Let's see. What else was I looking at? I was going to get us some. Perfect Door. So this brings me to Perfect Door. Everybody's shitting on it, right? We have this fraudulent account here. Thank you to TCG Player for continuing to fail at removing these. All it does is fuck up the market price. So we have not gotten wave 2 of these. It's still 5,400 boxes sold. It's a ton. It really is. Still selling 35 boxes a day, and the market price is like $215. I tend to think the second wave hasn't come out yet because the Pokemon Company knows that if it comes out in the middle of Chaos Rising, the market's probably going to dump on this a little bit, which isn't the best optically. But here's a booster box. The overall supply is 10 to 15% lower than what it was for Mega 2, Mega 1, and most likely is not going to get reprinted again. Not dissimilar than Journey Together, not dissimilar to Stellar Crown. Now, you can argue one box is better than the other. Quite honestly, I would argue that you can't even have that debate because this box is brand new. We don't know how it's going to age. But the ETBs for this, sitting right at $73. You can buy cases for $720 during the Mayhem sale on $529. I would highly recommend getting that 10 to 13% back. I think it's 10 if you're a member and an extra 3% if you've been in it for a year or 2 years, whatever the number is. You're basically getting ETB cases for $620, depending on your state with tax. That is an absolute fantastic deal. Because again, the ETBs, the 2 waves are out. I mean, the 2 waves are long out. Now there's 1,681 on here, but when they're gone, they're gone. Now, is it going to take 6 months for that to dry up? Probably. But quite honestly, I would probably rather buy $70 to $72 ETBs than $200 booster boxes right now, just kind of based on the supply demand and the price point that you can get in these at. But you can't really go wrong with the booster boxes either. Now, it sucks that you're in $200, $215. But if you shop around when the second wave of booster boxes comes out, you can find a bunch of broke-ass Timmy stores dumping it for $165, $180. And again, I highly recommend you take advantage of it. I think we actually held a couple hundred boxes back. Quite honestly, well, I mean, A, nobody wanted them initially, but B, I don't want to sell these things. These things are going to be $300 boxes by the end of the year because A, everything's over 300, and B, the overall supply of these are way, way down. So that brings me to the bogey of the conversation. So I do a lot of business with Magic. We sell a ton of it. We actually sell more Magic than we do Pokemon. And one of the things that has been really, really interesting is what does the performance look like of these set boxes and play boxes, not quite, and draft boxes when sets get to the end of their life and they start to rotate out, because we are in a little bit of a different world. Historically, Magic the Gathering booster boxes had not performed very, very well compared to Pokemon, but those things are starting to change. So let's look at Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And the reason I bring this up is this is going to get a reprint, most likely in June timeframe. I do have confirmed orders from distributors outside of the US. I don't have anything in the US yet. But since it's all shipping out of the US anyway, I'm guessing this is going to be a Q2 event, which means it better be by the end of June or they're not getting the revenue for this. So look at this baby, 150% in the last year. And it's basically gone from 120. It's dried up and gotten really close to out of print right here. And this is a set, I believe it rotates out of standard in January, February of 2027. But this is going to be the last reprint. But we can see as things dry up, the numbers just go up exponentially. No different than what we saw here with Shrouded. You know, it dries up, you go straight up. Dry up, go straight up. Same thing with Stellar Crown. The product starts to dry up. I mean, it is the same graph over and over again. For any of these products that are demanded, the second that the product dries up and people start to think it's out of print, they just buy it. Wilds of Eldraine. This thing is absolutely phenomenal. 162% in the last year. The only reason it's come down here is because, again, there are confirmed orders of this in overseas distributors shipping out of the US. Hint, hint, not Europe. So there's more coming here. But again, I mean, it's still selling 2 boxes a day. And I mean, 162%, you are right up there with Destined Rivals in the 1 year, 146%. So both of these boxes are outperforming Destined Rivals, which is probably the best return of any booster box in the history of Pokemon over the first year of its life. So long story short, chasing the set that everybody loves isn't necessarily the best investment strategy, the best flipping strategy, the best strategy for returns. On occasion, it works. Look at Destined Rivals. You know, buying Tesla worked for a long time, even though it wasn't kind of a shitty company, and Elon Musk is a little bit of a fraud. Enron worked for a long time. WorldCom worked for a long time. You know, it's just sometimes you have sets that they just work. Now, Destin works because there hasn't been more product, and the set's an absolute home run. Everybody knows that. But when you get to this point in the market, I tend to look at things that have less downside than upside. So, and I've been talking about Stellar Crown, Shroud of Fable for a while. Now, granted, I sold a lot of that stuff in the February Pokemon Day sale on TCG Player, but quite honestly, that's because I needed something to sell, just to kind of work here. But yeah, I would certainly not sleep on Magic the Gathering, because we are getting reprints of Ixalan, Eldraine, Phyrexian will be one, and then Lord of the Rings set coming in August, September in Q3 is the current tentative schedule. And look, you know, Perfect Order is going to do quite well because there's not going to be a lot of it. And again, I just go back to Journey Together ETBs. I looked this up and I was like, holy shit. These things were $60 forever, $65, $70, and they're up 78% for the year. You know, just because people on YouTube don't like a product, it doesn't mean it's a bad buy. So, anyway, guys, hopefully this was helpful. Have a good night.